Liam had traveled across empty space for what felt like forever, his ship sliding through the silent darkness between stars. He came to this planet because his scanners showed rich resources hidden in the strange glowing lands. But when he stepped down from the landing ramp and felt the soft crystal soil under his boots, he knew something was different. This world was not empty. It was alive. The forest stretched wide under a pale light that hung above like a frozen sun. The trees were tall and bright like glass, bending gently in a wind that did not sound like any wind on earth. It sang in low tones like the echo of a forgotten dream. The air was warm with a faint blue mist floating around the roots, and the silence made his heart beat louder than normal. His helmet displayed life signs, faint, weak, and far ahead. So he started walking slowly, scanning with every step, wondering what kind of life could exist here. His breath sounded heavy inside his helmet, like the ticking of time in a dark room. He moved through the glowing trees, feeling like someone was watching him every few steps. He thought he saw movement, a shadow moving behind the glass-like branches, but every time he turned, there was nothing, and then he saw it. Not a shadow, not a shape, but a figure, soft and small, crouched low behind a crystal tree. The glow of her skin caught his eyes like fireflies in the dark. She was real, she was alive, and she was not human. Liam froze for a second, his mind struggling to understand what he was looking at. She had skin that glowed faint like starlight, soft and smooth. Like water, her hair was pale like threads of silver falling down her back. Her body was thin, almost fragile, and her eyes were huge like the night sky, wide and full of fear. Liam did not want to scare her, so he raised his hand slowly and took one gentle step forward. He opened his mouth to speak, but before any word could leave his lips, she let out a scream so sharp and piercing it made air shake. It was a sound he had never heard before, a mix of fear and pain, so strong that his heart froze inside his chest. She stumbled back on her thin legs, her glowing hands shaking as tears formed like tiny bright drops on her cheeks. Then she turned and ran, her bare feet flashing in the glow as she vanished between the trees like a ghost. Liam stood there, frozen, his heart pounding like a drum in his ears, the echo of her scream still ringing around him, bouncing off the crystal forest. Like a haunting memory, he had come here for resources, maybe some rare minerals to help his mission. But now he had found something far more shocking: life. Real, intelligent life, and not just any life, a girl, an alien girl who looked at him with such fear it cut deep inside his chest. He whispered without thinking, his voice lost in the strange stillness. "Why did you scream like that? What are you running from me or something else?" The forest gave no answer, only the faint hum of the glowing branches and the far echo of water dripping somewhere in the distance. Liam felt something strange, something that was not part of his mission and not part of his plan. He felt like he had just stepped into a story bigger than himself. And that scream was only the beginning. Liam stood in the glowing forest long after she ran, his heart still beating hard inside his chest, the sound of her scream still hanging in the air like a ghost. He could not forget the way her eyes looked, wide, full of fear, like he was death itself. He had not come here to harm anyone. He had come for resources, for minerals, for survival. But now none of that mattered, because all he could think about was that girl, the way her fragile body glowed under the strange light, and the way her voice cut through the silence. He took a deep breath and started walking in the direction she ran, every step slow and careful, his boots pressing soft into the crystal ground, leaving faint marks behind. The mist moved around him like blue smoke curling at his legs, and the trees hummed as if alive, whispering in a language he could not understand. Followed the broken branches, the faint trail of her small footprints glowing in the dim light like soft stars on the ground. The trail led deeper into the forest where the trees grew taller, and the glow turned darker, like the light was being swallowed by the shadows. Liam kept moving, his body tense, his senses sharp, his hands empty, because he wanted her to see he meant no harm. Every few steps he thought he heard something, a faint sound like sobbing, carried by the wind. At first he thought it was his mind playing tricks, but then it came again, soft, weak, like a heart breaking in the dark. He followed the sound, moving past the glowing roots, past pools of strange blue water that rippled when he passed, and then he saw the shape of a broken structure, a head half buried in crystal and dust. It looked old, ancient, like it had been standing there for 1,000 years, walls cracked and vines glowing faint wrapping around its edges. The sound was coming from inside. Liam stepped closer, his boots crunching softly on the glass-like ground, and as he peered inside, he saw her. She was sitting near a broken wall, her small knees pulled tight to her chest, her head down, her pale silver hair falling like a curtain, her thin shoulders shaking with every sob. Liam felt something inside him twist. He had seen war, he had seen pain, but never something like this. Never a creature that looked so fragile, so lost, and so afraid. She was speaking in a voice so soft it almost vanished under the hum of the forest, words in a tongue he could not understand, broken whispers that sounded like cries for help, though he could not know for sure, but he felt it deep inside, because pain is a language that needs no translation. He stepped forward, slow as a shadow, his hands still raised, showing he carried no weapon. When his foot touched a loose crystal shard, it cracked loud under his boot, and her head snapped up, her eyes locking on him wide like two glowing moons. Her whole body froze for one long breathless moment. Liam did not move, he only looked at her, his eyes soft, his breath calm, and he spoke in a low voice, gentle like the wind. I am not here to hurt you. His words meant nothing to her, but his tone, his face, maybe they'd something, because she did not scream. This time she only stared, her body trembling like a leaf in a storm. Liam lowered himself to the ground slowly, sitting on one knee, keeping his hands open in front of him, showing his empty palms. He looked at her and smiled faint and whispered again, I am not your enemy. The girl blinked, her lips trembling, her breath fast like a frightened bird. Then she looked away, her eyes filling with tears again, as if she did not know whether to trust him or run. Liam stayed there silent for a long time, listening to the sound of her weak sobs and the distant hum of the forest, until something new reached his ears, a low, deep sound like the ground itself was breathing. It came from far, but it was growing closer, slow, heavy, like steps crushing the earth. He saw the way her head jerked up and her eyes filled, not with fear of him, but fear of something else, something coming. Her small hands clutched, her knees tight, her glowing skin trembling, and then she looked at him, her eyes wide like she was begging, though no words came from her mouth. Liam felt a chill crawl down his spine as the sound grew louder, echoing through the glowing trees like drums of war. He did not know what it was, but he knew one thing: whatever was coming, it was not friendly, and it was hunting her, and now maybe him too. He looked at her again, his voice low and steady as he said, stay behind me, even though he knew she might not understand, but something in his tone made her blink and stop shaking for a moment. He slowly reached for the small energy blade on his belt, the hum of the weapon faint as it came to life in his hand, and he turned toward the sound, his muscles tight, his heart a storm inside his chest, and deep in the shadows between the glowing trees something moved. Something big, dark, and angry, and that was the moment Liam knew the scream was never about him. It was about them, the real monsters hiding in the dark, now coming closer every second, ready to kill her and anyone who stood in their way. The sound of heavy steps grew louder like thunder, rolling through the glowing forest, and Liam felt the weight of danger pressing down on him with every beat of his heart. His grip tightened around the energy blade, the soft hum of the weapon mixing with the strange music of the trees. The girl sat still, her body trembling, her wide, glowing eyes locked on the dark path beyond the broken walls of the old structure, and Liam saw the way her breath came fast, like she was drowning in fear. He wanted to speak, wanted to tell her it would be fine, even though he did not know if that was true, but before any word could form, the shadows between the glass-like trees shifted, and the hunters came. They stepped into the light, tall figures with armor that shimmered like black metal and faces hidden under strange bone-like masks. Their bodies strong and heavy, their movements slow but full of power and purpose. They carried long weapons that pulsed with red energy. their steps crushing the glowing roots underfoot as if nothing could stop them. Liam counted 4, maybe 5 shapes, moving toward the ruins like predators that had smelled blood, and his chest tightened. Because now he knew the truth. She had not screamed at him because he was human. She had screamed because these things had been chasing her, and if they caught her they would kill her without a second thought. The girl made a sound soft like a broken cry, and she crawled back, pressing herself against the wall, her thin hands clutching the stone, her glowing skin shaking as the hunters came closer, their voices rising in low, harsh tones, a language Liam did not understand, but the meaning was clear. They wanted her. They were calling to her, ordering her to come out and face death. Liam rose to his feet, his blade glowing blue in his hand, and he stepped in front of her, his body forming a shield between her and the killers the hunters stopped for a moment, their dark masks turning toward him. The one in front tilted its head as if surprised to see him. Then it made a sound like a growl, sharp and full of hate, and the others moved to spread out, surrounding him like wolves. Liam knew he could not talk. His words would mean nothing here, so he let his stance speak for him, his feet firm, his blade steady, and his eyes locked on the leader. The hunters seemed to understand because the one in front raised its weapon, a long spear that crackled with red fire, and in the same breath, it charged forward. Liam met it with a burst of speed, the blue glow of his blade slashing through the air, sparks flying as the weapons clashed with a sound like thunder. The impact shook his arm, but he held strong, twisting and driving the hunter back, his breath coming fast inside his helmet. The others moved fast, closing in from both sides, and Liam spun his blade, cutting through the spear of the first hunter, snapping it in half, then kicking the creature back into a wall, shards of crystal flying. The second hunter lunged, swinging a heavy blade that roared with energy, and Liam ducked, rolling on the glass ground, coming up with his blade slicing across the alien armor, sparks flying, but the strike did not break through the thick black shell, and Liam cursed under his breath. The third hunter fired a bolt of red energy from its weapon, and the blast slammed into the wall behind him, sending glowing shards raining down around the girl. She screamed and covered her head, and Liam felt a surge of rage burn through his chest. He turned and threw his blade, spinning it through the air like a blue star, and it hit the third hunter in the chest, knocking it down hard to the ground. He reached for his backup weapon, a small plasma pistol, and fired 2 shots, hitting the fourth hunter in the leg. The creature roared, stumbling back, but still coming like a beast in pain. The first hunter had recovered and came at him again, claws out sharp like knives. Liam blocked with his arm guard, sparks burning his suit as the claws scraped, and he slammed his fist into the hunter's mask, cracking the bone shell, sending the alien staggering back. But then the second hunter came and hit him hard in the side with the flat of its blade, the impact throwing him across the broken floor. He hit the wall, pain exploding in his ribs, his breath tearing out in a gasp, and his vision spinning. But he forced himself up because behind him, the girl was still there, small and shaking, and if he fell she would die. The hunters came again, their voices harsh, their weapons glowing, and Liam felt the world slow as his mind burned with one thought: no one touches her. He grabbed the fallen blade, his hands bleeding under the gloves, and when the first hunter leaped, he drove the blade up into its chest, blue light bursting as the energy tore through the armor. The creature let out a scream that shook the ruins and fell in a heap, its weapon clattering on the glowing floor. The others froze for a breath, their heads turning toward their fallen leader, and Liam stood there, panting, his chest rising and falling, blood dripping from his lip, his blade glowing brighter than ever in his grip, and he said low and steady, "You want her, you go through me." The hunters growled in their harsh voices, their weapons lifting again. The fight was far from over, and Liam knew he might not survive. But when he looked back and saw the girl's eyes wide and wet and filled with something more than fear, something like hope, he knew what he had to do. He would stand and fight until his last breath, because no one was going to hurt her, not while he lived. And as the hunters stepped forward, the glow of their weapons lighting The ruins. Liam raised his blade and faced them, his heart pounding like thunder, ready to show these monsters what it means to be human. The ruins shook with every strike as the hunters came again, their weapons flashing red like angry fire, and Liam fought with everything he had, his muscles burning, his breath tearing in his chest, his body screaming in pain. But he did not stop, because the girl was still behind him, small and shaking, and he could feel her fear like a shadow on his back. The hunters were fast, their armor black as the void, their claws sharp, and their rage endless. They moved in circles, like wolves, their voices growling in that harsh alien language. And Liam knew they would not stop until they had her, or until he was dead. He blocked the first strike, his blade glowing blue, clashing with the red spear, sparks flying into the mist, the sound loud like breaking metal. The impact sent pain through his arm, but he twisted, kicked hard, and sent the hunter stumbling back. The second one came fast, slashing with a heavy blade, and Liam ducked the strike, rolling across the ground, shards of crystal cutting his suit. But he ignored the sting. He came up firing his pistol, hitting the alien in the shoulder, burning the black armor, but not enough to stop it. The third one lunged, claws flashing, and Liam spun, slicing deep into its arm, blue light ripping through, and the creature howled, falling back, its weapon clattering to the floor. His breath came in harsh gasps, his strength draining fast, sweat dripping inside his helmet, blood running from a cut on his face. He could not keep this up much longer, and when the leader came again, roaring and swinging a massive spear glowing like fire, he knew this was it. Liam lifted his blade with both hands and blocked the strike, the shock running through his bones. Like lightning, the hunter pushed hard, forcing him back, step by step, until his boots hit the broken wall, and he felt the cold edge of defeat. But then something happened that changed everything. The girl moved. She was no longer frozen in fear, no longer just hiding behind him. She stood, now her glowing skin bright like a star, her silver hair flying in the air, and her hands outstretched, shaking but strong. A sound came from her lips, a soft broken word in his language. No kill. Her voice small like a whisper, but filled with something that made Liam stop for a second. And then the air around them changed. The glow of the forest grew brighter, and the ground hummed under their feet. The hunters paused too, their heads turning toward her, their masked faces tilting as if shocked. And then it happened. A burst of light exploded from her small hands, slamming into the hunters like a wave of pure energy, throwing them back across the ruins, their weapons flying from their grips, their voices crying out in rage and pain. Liam stared, his heart pounding, his mind racing. What just happened? What is she? He turned to her and saw the tears on her glowing cheeks, her breath hard, her body trembling from the force she had just unleashed. And then she fell to her knees, weak like a candle about to go out. Liam ran to her, dropping his blade and catching her before she hit the ground, her small body shaking in his arms, her eyes half open, filled with pain and something else, something like shame and fear. He held her tight, his voice low and soft. You are safe now. But she shook her head slowly, her lips moving in broken words. Not safe, not ever. They kill me because I different. Liam felt the words cut deep like knives, because now he understood the truth. She was not just running, she was hunted by her own kind. These hunters were not just soldiers, they were executioners sent to kill her because she was born different, because she had power they feared and power they wanted to erase. She was an outcast, a crime in the shape of a child, and his chest burned with rage, because how could they see her as a curse when she was so fragile, so innocent, so alive? He touched her face, gentle, wiping the tears from her skin, and whispered, You are not a curse, you are a miracle. She looked at him, her eyes wide like stars, her lips trembling as she whispered back in broken human words, Why help? Liam smiled faint, even though his ribs hurt, his body torn, and said, Because it is what we do. We help, we fight for life. Hunters were moving again, their bodies rising, slow, their voices harsh, their rage hotter than before. And Liam knew they would not stop. He looked at the girl, her eyes full of fear and hope, mixed like storm and light, and he said, We need to move now. He lifted her in his arms, her body light like a feather, and ran out of the ruins into the glowing forest, the mist curling around them, the sound of the hunters chasing behind their heavy steps. Shaking the ground, the girl clung to him, her small hands gripping his armor, her face pressed against his chest, her breath soft and weak, and Liam ran with everything. He had every muscle burning, every bone screaming, the trees flashing past, the hum of the forest loud like drums, and the hunters closing in, their voices like thunder. Reached a ridge, the glow of his ship far in the distance, a faint promise of safety, but the path was steep, and the hunters were close, too close. He stopped, breathing hard, his eyes scanning the land, and he saw a narrow cave hidden behind a wall of glowing roots. He ran inside, the light dim, the air heavy, the cave deep and winding. He pushed through until the sound of the hunters faded into the distance, and then he stopped, lowering her gently to the ground, her eyes half closed, her breath thin. And Liam felt fear cold and sharp in his chest. He touched her cheek and whispered, "Stay with me, you hear me? You stay." She opened her eyes, weak but bright, and whispered, "My name, Ari." He smiled faint through the blood on his lips. "Ari, that is a good name," he said, and for the first time she gave a small smile before her eyes closed, and darkness almost took her. Liam sat there in the cave, holding her hand, his blade glowing faint beside him, his heart burning with a fire he had never felt before, and he swore to himself no one would take her, no one would hurt her, not while he was alive. Even if it meant facing every monster this world had, he would fight, because she was not just an alien, she was life, and life deserves to live. And outside the cave the hunters gathered, their voices rising in a cry of war, their rage echoing through the glowing forest as the night closed in, and Liam knew the fight was far from over. The cave was dark and cold, the glowing roots outside giving a faint light that barely touched the walls inside. Liam sat with his back against the stone, his blade glowing blue on the ground, his body torn and aching, his breath hard, every inhale like fire in his lungs. Ari lay next to him, her small body weak, her face pale, her eyes closed, her breath soft and thin like a candle that could die at any moment, and he felt fear like ice inside his chest, because if he lost her, everything he had done, every drop of blood, every fight would mean nothing. He touched her cheek, gentle, whispering, "Stay with me, Ari, stay with me," but she did not answer, only breath slow like sleep. He listened to the sounds outside, the heavy steps, the harsh voices. The hunters were close. They had tracked him even here, and now they were gathering for the final kill. He could feel the ground hum under their weight, feel the air shake with their rage. He knew they would come soon, and he knew he could not run. He was out of time, out of strength, and almost out of hope. But then he looked at her, saw her face so soft, so innocent, and something burned inside him like fire, chasing away the cold. He would not let them take her, not while he could move, not while his heart still beat. He picked up his blade, the hum low and steady, like a heartbeat, and stood, every muscle screaming, his legs heavy like stone, but his spirit bright like a star. His visor cracked, his suit torn, blood running from his side. But none of it mattered. What mattered was behind him in the shadows, small and fragile, and worth everything. He stepped to the mouth of the cave, his boots crunching on the stone, and looked out into the glowing forest, and saw them, the hunters, waiting. Their armor black, their weapons burning red, their masks cold and cruel. There were 6 now, maybe more, their shapes huge in the dim light, their voices rising in a cry that shook the air like thunder. Liam felt the sound inside his bones, but he did not step back. He gripped his blade tighter and walked out into the open, his shadow long on the glowing ground. Leader stepped forward, its spear humming with fire, its mask cracked from the fight before, and its voice a growl that promised death. Liam did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning: surrender the girl or die. And Liam smiled, faint blood on his lips, his voice low and steady as he said, "You will never touch her." The leader roared and charged, the others following, weapons flashing red. Liam ran to meet them, his blade bright like a blue star, cutting the dark. The first clash came like a storm, metal slamming against energy, sparks flying, his arms burning with the force. But he held strong, twisted, and struck. His blade slicing through the spear, breaking it in half. The leader roared, swinging a claw, and Liam ducked, rolling and slashing deep into its leg. Blue light tearing through black armor. The creature fell, but the others came fast too, from the left. One from the right, and Liam spun his blade, cutting one across the arm, then firing his pistol into the other, burning holes in the black shell. But the third hit him hard, knocking him to the ground, his blade flying from his handpane, ripped through him like fire, and for a second he saw nothing but darkness. But then he heard a sound, soft and weak like a whisper, his name. Ari, her voice calling him from the shadows, and that sound brought him back. He rolled as the hunter struck, claws cutting the stone, and grabbed his blade, spinning and driving it up through the creature's chest, blue light bursting as the alien screamed and fell. Liam rose, slow, blood dripping, his breath ragged, but his eyes bright with fire, and he faced the last two hunters, their weapons glowing, their rage like a storm. He charged before they could move his blade, cutting high, then low, sparks flying. One fell, and the other swung hard, hitting his shoulder, sending him to his knees, but he drove the blade up with all he had left, and the last hunter fell in silence. He stood there in the glowing forest, his body broken, his breath a ragged storm, his blade dim and heavy in his hand, and around him the hunters lay still, their weapons smoking, their black armor cracked, the air filled with the smell of burned metal. And Liam turned slowly, his legs weak, and walked back into the cave. Ari was sitting up, her glowing eyes wide, her small hands shaking, as she looked at him like he was something out of a dream. He fell to his knees in front of her, his blade clattering to the floor, and she crawled to him, her tears bright on her cheeks, her voice soft like wind. "You hurt?" He smiled faint, his lips cracked, his voice a whisper. "I am fine." She touched his face, her fingers gentle, and said, "Why you fight for me?" He looked at her, eyes bright like stars, and said, "Because life matters, no matter where it is, no matter what it looks like, you matter." She pressed her forehead to his for a moment, her tears warm on his skin, and whispered, "Human friend." And for the first time since he came to this world, he felt peace, even as the pain tore at his body, even as the night closed in, because he knew he had kept his promise. He had saved her, and maybe in doing so, saved something more, something bigger than both of them. He lifted his arm weak and tapped his cum, calling his ship, the faint glow of its beacon flashing in the distance like hope in the dark hours. Later, as the sun rose pale and cold over the glowing forest, Liam sat on the edge of his ship, his body wrapped in bandages, his eyes on the horizon, and beside him Ari sat, her silver hair shining in the new light, her small hand in his, and for the first time she smiled, and he smiled too, because they both knew the truth. This was not the end, it was the beginning, and out here in the endless night, humanity had just shown something no alien could ever forget: what it means to fight for someone else, what it means to be human. The end.